be seated.
Let us pray.
Heavenly Father, we come before you today in humility and in faith. We thank you for all you have given to us and the many blessings we have in our lives. We ask you, Father, for your guidance and your strength. Show us the way and fill us with courage, with wisdom. Help us to remember your love and your grace and to be faithful in your service to you. Give us the patience and understanding each day to face life's challenges with grace. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to extend a warm welcome to those joining us on location here in our studio audience at the United Nations Development Program. Those joining us on Zoom from Bermuda, Bahamas, Dominica, Jamaica, and possibly any other region. Welcome to UNDP's Fireside Chat, which is the first leg in our Resilient series. Today is June 1, the start of the 2023 hurricane season. I am your moderator this afternoon, Karen Willis, and I am the project associate here at UNDP. Now, the Resilience series will provide a platform for best practices in hurricane resilience to be shared with the world. Today's Fireside Chat is themed Resilient, Ready, and Raring to Go. Lessons and best practice in hurricane resilience. Today, we welcome Bermuda, Dominica, and Jamaica to the Fireside Chat. Today, we will be hearing from Mrs. Denise Antonio, our resident representative here at the United Nations Development Program, Ms. Rosie Azar, Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Home Affairs in Bermuda, Mr. Richard Thompson, Director General Acting at the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, as well as Mr. Samuel Garrett, Resilience Planning and Development Consultant, Climate Resilience Execution Agency, CREED for short, from Dominica. We encourage you to share, comment, and like the live feed, and to, of course, upload your own post to this event using the hashtags Hurricane Season and UNDP Resilient Series. During the Q&A, of course, there will be an open mic here on location and on Zoom for guests to participate. Guests on social media, please write down your questions and we'll be sure to share them. Now, I have the distinct pleasure this afternoon to introduce our resident representative, Mrs. Denise Antonio. Please make her welcome.
Thank you very much, Karen. Minister Tanae Ferbert, the Minister of Social Development and Seniors and in Bermuda. Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Home Affairs in Bermuda, Rosie Azar. Director General Acting, Jamaica's Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, Richard Thompson. Resilience Planning and Development Consultant of the Climate Resilience Execution Agency for Dominica, Samuel Garrett. Representatives of the ministries, departments, and agencies, academic institutions here on location and online, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you. Let me wish you a warm welcome to those present here in our conference room in UNDP multi-country office in Jamaica, and also to our online viewers on day one of the 2023 hurricane season. So as we know that in this era of climate change, hurricane season re-energizes the global conversation about resilience. As climate change continues to affect the frequency and intensity of weather events and and the impact of natural disasters, including the financial costs, only increases. Therefore, building resilience and properly planning for disaster is very critical more than ever. So let me just give you a little bit of statistics. In 2020, there were 416 notable disasters, natural disasters event, at an estimated $268 billion. According to IMF data, between 1950 and 2016, there were 511 disasters worldwide, and 324 of them happened here in the Caribbean, killing about 250,000 people and affecting more than 24 million people through injury, loss of lives, loss of homes, and of their livelihood. So our region is 7 times more likely to be hit by natural disasters and sustain damages to GDP 6 times higher than any other large nation in the world. So the Caribbean is not helpless. There's a lot of significant solutions that are being done to mitigate the impact of climate change. And that's why we're here today to actually hear from some of the countries that are doing really, really good things, and it's an opportunity to showcase the Caribbean. The head of UNDP, the administrator, Mr. Achim Steiner, insists that the world has the knowledge, expertise, technology, and all that it needs to in innovation, knowledge sharing, risk-taking, market transformation to address this issue of climate change. There's a lot of work that UNDP has done through the multi-country office to support a number of countries, but also there's a lot of work done in the Caribbean with the United Nations in supporting that. For example, we have been able to provide support to countries in terms of disaster risk assessment, our housing and building damage assessment, which the Bahamas has used and Dominica used during their time. We've helped in building back better policies. We've provided technical advice. There's access to our global network, which can actually support the disaster risk resilient skills throughout the world. This support is something that we've done in our last programming cycle. We're doing it now, even in our current 2022 to 26 cycle. Now, under our previous country program, we unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because we don't want to do this, to support Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas after, of course, we all know in 2019, Bahamas had Hurricane 5, Dorian, which really caused a lot of destruction in Abaco and Grand Bahama. And so we were able to help them in building the capacity of MSMEs to be able to build a more resilient business and to support some of the restorations of their livelihood through some micro grants. We help in a number of areas. We're currently also working in the Bahamas, really through the India-UN partnership, to support the government in building a hurricane resilient shelter in Abaco, and you will hear a lot more about that in the series. So let me just give a few suggestions in terms of how do we continue to build the resilience in the Caribbean, because like I said before, we're not helpless, we can do it. In reading documentations, they gave 4 suggestions, and I'm sure all of you who are online and here present experts, you know it. 1, they said identify the trends. And the important thing about doing that is that we have to have data. And we know that there is a dearth of data in the Caribbean. So when you want to do reports, you can't find the data. So data will drive a lot of the work we do. The other thing is enhancing the risk mitigation. You need to have public-private risk mitigation. You need to have disaster response and business continuity. You need to modernize, implement stringent building codes requirement. Bahamas has really good building codes. The challenge they had was enforcing them. Bermuda, you will hear from them, have really strong building codes, and they enforce those codes. We have to improve our communications. And then we talk about transferring risk. How do we transfer the risk? You have to develop insurance and investment strategies to protect the people and the assets of the country. And then you have to, a lot of time people talk about introducing affordable and relevant products to help close the global protection gap. People don't have insurance for their homes, so when they're damaged, they're not able to rebuild because there are no insurance. And last but not least, you build resilience. And building resilience is not only government's responsibility. Building resilience are all the partners that are online, all the partners that are not online, private sector, civil society, universities. Everyone has to come together to build the resilience. So therefore, I look forward to the insight that we will hear from our colleagues in today's fire chat, which I'm pleased to announce will also inform the Abaco Shelter Project in Bahamas, and they will talk about that. And you can be sure to continue to count on UNDP to be agile, responsive partner in our shared quest for climate resilient future in the Caribbean. So let's start the fire chat and inspiration beginning. Thank you.
This is Antonio. Wow, what a presentation. I'm sure, of course, it resonates with us all because we know that the storms are coming, the hurricanes are coming, they're coming more severe. And so it requires a lot of planning and investment. You would have heard Mrs. Antonio speak to indicate that we need to foster more public-private partnership. And most importantly, we are not helpless. We are not helpless. We have a lot to offer, a lot of lessons, a lot of solutions, and intertwined in that, of course, is the importance of innovation and digitization to ensure that we're using data to drive policies. And I'm sure today we'll hear from some of our guests, of course, who will mention resource mobilization as a key pillar to creating the change that we want to see in terms of how we respond and adapt to the impacts of climate change. Now it's time for our fireside chat. And first up, of course, we have our representative here from the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, Mr. Richard Thompson, who is the Director General acting. But before we do that, may I ask you to turn your attention to the screen as we play a short video on the work of ODPEM.
Hello, I'm Joyce Reynolds Robinson, and I'm the Information Officer here at the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management. And I'm going to tell you how to be, what we're about, and what you could expect from us. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the information. Who we are. The ODPEM is the main government agency with responsibility for disaster risk management in Jamaica. Our mission statement is, ODPEM is committed to leading the process of reducing the impact of disasters in Jamaica through comprehensive disaster management. What we do: hazard mitigation and vulnerability assessment, business continuity planning, national and community disaster planning, training, simulation and drills, research services, public education and awareness, and library services, just to name a few. Thank you for watching and follow us on our social media pages.
All right, thank you so much. So first in the hot seat, the fireside chat begins, is Mr. Richard Thompson. Now, he will share on Jamaica's telecommunications best practice for disaster preparation, recovery, relief, and resilience. Now, Mr. Thompson, when someone thinks of disaster, the first thing that perhaps comes to mind is the social impacts in terms of families being dislocated, communities, and in general, the physical infrastructure. Now, please share the critical impact and importance of telecommunications on disaster and resilience. So that creates a little context and framework. What are some of the key practices implemented in Jamaica for disaster recovery, relief, and resilience?
All right, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. First, let me say, I know we're in the Caribbean, and cricket is one of the main sports in the Caribbean, if not the main sport, even though the West Indies cricket team is currently not doing very well. Even though the West Indies cricket team is currently not doing very well. I played cricket in school and in university. No, I play cricket in my mind. But I was never first at bat. Was never opener, but today I am one. But it is good to be a part of this forum, and we are at the beginning of the North Atlantic hurricane season. And this morning we had the National Disaster Risk Management Council meeting, chaired by the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica. And I know we are talking about more resilient infrastructure and around our telecommunication systems, but resilience goes way beyond just infrastructure. It also looks at our legislative framework. It also looks at our systems of business, our administrative systems of business. And we are very sound in Jamaica. We have probably one of the best disaster risk management framework globally. And I proudly can say that even when I am overseas, that we have a very robust and solid disaster risk management framework. And coupled with that is a very modern legislative arrangement that makes our system very sound, because as part of our daily disaster risk management processes, our legislative agenda has to be up there. It has to be very strong, and that was one of the, coming out of the HFA, coming out of the Hyogo Framework for Action and coming into the Sendai Framework. Your countries needed to have strong legislative agenda. And so we would have moved in that vein even way before the HFA, because the Caribbean disaster risk management, our Caribbean disaster risk management framework, CDM, our comprehensive disaster risk management agenda in the Caribbean actually predates HFA, and so we have been doing that for some time. So that's part and parcel of the systematic process of building resilience, resilient infrastructure, resilient administrative system, and strong legislative arrangement. So that's where we are. So we in Jamaica, comprehensively, we have a very robust comprehensive risk management system, and our disaster risk management agenda is one of the true joined-up government approaches in Jamaica. So collectively, everyone is a part of the process. And we for some time we looked at it, and we look at our disaster risk management communication and to find ways to see how robust our disaster risk management communication could be. And so in 2000 thereabout, we just sitting at a cocktail reception with the Japanese, I was asked by the Japanese ambassador, what are some of the things that you think can happen in Jamaica to make our system more robust? And so I said to him, what we would like in Jamaica, and personally what I would like, is for a system where, communication system where everyone can communicate on the same platform in times of disasters. And the reason why that came to mind was looking at what happened during 9/11 with the bombing situation in New York, where there was not a system in place where the fire brigade and the police could communicate on the same platform. And so that led to a lot of the firefighters perishing in the building, because while the police were coming out, them seeing the danger that existed then, the firefighters were going in order to provide rescue operation to persons there. So it was significant for us to say, let us look at a system where we can all communicate on the same platform. Even though we had a disaster communication system in place, however, we had separate systems. And so we started the process then, and we got support from JICA in terms of building out our disaster risk management communication apparatus. And it's to ensure that we are modernizing our present systems in terms of emergency communication. In disasters, without proper emergency communication, you are literally dead in the water. You'll be operating blind. And so a part of resilience is to ensure that you can communicate and you can have not only emergency communication for the state entities that are and private entities that are a part of the process, because public-private partnership is critical, but you can ensure that within that communication apparatus that you are providing early warning for community personnel. So the current system that we're building out have roughly 24 repeater stations that will work to provide information, pump emergency messages across the network. And we saw it fit to include within that siren sites that will be placed in communities that can provide early warning signals and early warning messages to communities. Currently, we have one existing siren site, which is a tsunami warning siren in Old Harbour. Old Harbour is one of the model communities in Jamaica that is I would say is a resilient community in terms of the work that has gone into Old Harbour. It is the community that takes, one of the communities, I should say, that really takes disaster risk management seriously. And so that prototype, which is in Old Harbour, will be replicated throughout this current project. Old Harbour has done significant work in its community training and ensuring that whenever that siren goes off, even in the simulation activity, that they take it serious. I remember we did one simulation exercise, and I think a lady did not know that it was a simulation exercise. We did a tsunami warning simulation exercise, and while she was running up the street, she was saying, and she was being videoed, and she called out a lady. I don't remember the name of the lady, and she said, "If you find my kid's birth certificate, please."
I think it's all Jamaican, right?
please take it to me. So she did not know that it was actually a simulation exercise, but because they were so trained, she took it seriously, and she was responding to the event itself. So a part of our resilience building as well is to ensure that your population is sensitized and that they do respond to disasters, and they do respond to messages that are granted. So
and that would also bring me to my just expounding on what you said in terms of complementarity of telecommunications and the communities. How was that in terms of, ensuring that there were synergies in implementing the technologies, the early warning systems, and ensuring that community members bought into the vision of ODPEM?
So a part of it is that we, for some time, many years ago, about probably 2009, we did a project which morphed into a program, which was building disaster resilience community. It started as a project, and it is now one of the programs of the ODPEM. And a part of that is to ensure that we are building out resilience in communities. We train community members. We build out community disaster risk management teams. Within those community disaster risk management teams, we had community emergency response teams. We had CERTs, as a part of that. And we have a very robust local response mechanism. So the parish councils, I am very old school, so sometimes I still say parish councils, the municipal corporations are a part of that process, and really that's where the rubber hits the road in terms of community preparedness. So we have a three-tier system in Jamaica. We have national, parish, and community, and the parish apparatus is really the one that links closely with the community apparatus. So there's a lot of training that goes on as it relates to the community level, with the PDCs and ODPEM and the SDC being involved in that process. So whenever time we are introducing new projects to community, community sensitization is critical, because as an urban planner, you can't have any kind of development that is accepted by a community without involving the community. And so once individuals feel that they're a part of the process, and not only that they are introduced to the process, but they have a collective input and response at the beginning of the project, then that goes over better, and then there is better continuity, because there is individual ownership in terms of the project itself. So that's what we do whenever time we are building out any project, or we are doing any training, any activities around disaster risk reduction and emergency and disaster preparedness, that we involve the community at the outset, and we involve the community disaster risk management teams. And one of the things that we are proud about in Jamaica, well, men need to get more involved, but our community disaster risk management framework and the process and the teams involved at the community level are significantly dominated by women. And a part of our disaster risk management agenda is to ensure, gender issues are not only female issues, but to ensure that gender imperatives are placed at the forefront of our disaster risk management processes and strategies, looking at our vulnerable groupings to include women, children, looking at men, their roles and responsibilities, looking at their own vulnerabilities as well, looking at our age group, how we disaggregate our population in terms of age, and how we ensure that collectively right across the board that we are responding to the needs of everyone. Also ensuring within that process, and remember I speak to resilience in the form of resilience infrastructure, resilience administrative arrangement, and a resilient legislative process. Within that process is to ensure that there is inclusivity in terms of our disaster risk management agenda, and in terms of inclusive DRR, to ensure critically that our most vulnerable population are at the forefront of our consideration. Persons with disabilities, women, children, the aged, those persons are at the forefront of our risk management agenda, and to ensure that whatever policies, programs, or projects that are implemented, that it is implemented with that consideration at the forefront. So basically that's what we do in terms of involving the collective in any kind of projects that we're building out.
Absolutely, and that is how you actually build resilience. I see that you spoke about the strong ecological system that exists in terms of the national, community, and parish level. Now, you spoke to this before, but in terms of the government of Jamaica, they had partnered with the government of Japan through the Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA for short, on the project for improvement of emergency communication in Jamaica. Tell us a little bit about that project and its contribution to Jamaica's disaster resilience.
Well, going over again I spoke of the development itself of the project, the genesis of the project, and so the aim is to really, as I said before, ensure that there is comprehensive communication in times of disasters. And so we are currently building out that project. As I said before, the project will comprise of 15 siren sites. 14 within the project. 15 we will end up with 15 overall, to include the current Olava Bay tsunami warning siren site. And we will have we have built out in design a very comprehensive and robust communication network sitting on the backbone of the ministry, the National Works Agency communication apparatus. So we looked at it in terms of the design itself, and to ensure that all the communication nodes across the country, that you will always have communication if one of those nodes should go down. Because at times you find that you build out a community, a national communication apparatus, but it is not robust enough where if you should have a major hurricane, a major earthquake, and there is breakage in the communication system, then some communities are left without communication, or you're unable to get communications coming from certain areas. So the network itself is a very robust network that lend itself to continuity if one of the nodes should go down. As the beneficiaries within that will be the significant to it is the Jamaica Fire Brigade and the Ministry of Health and Wellness that will have communication radios being played, and the local authorities, they are part of the process as well. We'll have radios in mobile radios, base station, and our main communication centers. So the main communication center will be at the ODPEM. We have part of your network and your overall communication system is to ensure that there is constant maintenance and repairs. So we have built into that as well two repair and maintenance location. They are classified maintenance sites, one at the ODPEM and one at the newly built fire station in Ironshore in Montego Bay. So basically that's how the system is, to ensure that the police is a part of the process, the Jamaica Defense Force, and we have built into that as well kind of collective public-private partnership to ensure that our local telecom providers are a part of our system as well. So the Parish Council, the Ministry of Health, and the Jamaica Fire Brigade is the main beneficiary, but the security apparatus is a part of the system as well, for them to have communication linking into that network. So it's really a public safety network, which is a little bit different, even though police, military is a part of your public safety network. Is a little bit different from your national security network, which is only reserved for your security elements, which is your Jamaica Defense Force, your police. So it's really a national public safety network, and those are the critical partners, and the Ministry of Labor and Social Security is a part of the process as well. So those are the critical partners in any kind of disaster emergency communication that takes place in Jamaica. The ODPEM as a national disaster coordinator, and all the support and secondary elements that are a part of the process. So it's a very robust system we're building out to ensure that there is national communication in times of disasters. And I know we're in the hurricane season, and we tend to speak a lot to hurricanes in Jamaica, but we are susceptible as well to severe seismic occurrences. We are very vulnerable to earthquakes.
We had a recent earthquake as well.
We had a recent one, epicentered in St. Thomas. We sit on a very active Caribbean plate margin. We sit very close to the Caribbean and North American plate margin, and we are unique always unique as Jamaica and Jamaicans. We are very unique in the fact that we sit on what is called a microplate, which is a Guinevere microplate, and it's a very active plate. And then within Jamaica itself, our own beautiful island of Jamaica, we have a very extensive fault system. So if anybody in this room and persons online are a lover of boiled eggs, and and if you should boil an egg and crack that eggshell, and you see all the cracks on that eggshell, that's basically how Jamaica look in terms of the fault lines that runs across Jamaica. So
Yes.
we are very vulnerable to seismic occurrence. So the systems that we build out in Jamaica, and what we continue to build out is to ensure that we're looking at a comprehensive disaster risk management process, looking at all hazards. And so not only hydrometeorological, hurricane, drought, you name it, but seismic, geophysical, you talk about geophysical outside of seismic, so your landslides, all those things, and also ensure that from the technological, biological, nuclear component, even though we are low down on the list in terms of our impacts to nuclear occurrence, but we ensure that any system that we are building out on our national apparatus is able to respond to all those disasters.
And as we wrap this component, as we noted before, today marks the hurricane season. Is there a message? This is your opportunity as the agency, the key agency who supports and manages disaster here in Jamaica. What message would you send to Jamaicans and even persons in the region about preparing for the hurricane season?
I think it is the same message that is sent every year in terms of ensuring that there is comprehensive preparedness, not only at the state level, but also at the individual family level. Because even though this hurricane season is predicted to be an average hurricane season, average as it relates to hurricane seasons is really 10 systems. But I think the prediction thus far, and they tend to modify it over the season, is for 14 named storms, 7 to be hurricane, 3 to 4 to be major hurricane, and you're talking about category 3 and above. We always say in the disaster risk management arena that especially for small island developing states that have very fragile economies and economies that are built on fragile sectors, agriculture, tourism, those sectors are very fragile. It takes only one system to really devastate your economy. So it requires
us to prepare.
Comprehensive preparedness from the state level all the way down to the individual level.
Absolutely.
So that's the message. Comprehensive preparedness from state level all to individual level.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Please let us show our appreciation to Mr. Richard Thompson, who is Director General Acting of the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management. Thank you. Now, up next, we have Dominica. Now, in 2017, the country was devastated by a Category 5 hurricane and is now world-renowned for its vision to become the world's first climate resilient nation. Isn't that something audacious? Dominica is seeking to be the world's first climate resilient nation. Now, of course, we have our correspondent online, and the organization charged with driving the vision in terms of climate resilience is the Climate Resilience Execution Agency in Dominica, CREED for short. Help me in welcoming Mr. Samuel Garrett, Resilience Planning and Development Consultant from Dominica. But before we talk to Mr. Garrett, here is a short video excerpt from CREED.
Dominica, The Caribbean Nature Island today, on the 18th of September, 2020. Its glorious nature surrounds us. Hiking through lush green forest is a joy. Seeing wide mountainous vistas or beautiful and unique shore formations is truly an uplifting experience. This land of many waterfalls and rivers has plenty to offer, despite being just a small volcanic island. Walking today through Roseau, its capital, it's hard not to reflect. Exactly 3 years ago, Dominica suffered terrible devastation inflicted by the monster Hurricane Maria. One of the strongest Atlantic hurricanes ever, it went through our island with the power of several nuclear bombs. Lives were lost, whole communities swept away, wildlife decimated. Looking around today, it's hard to believe that it really happened so recently. And yet, all of us who went through it will never forget that night and the following morning of destruction. Although every person here has his own story to tell, this commemorative video shares what we all remember like yesterday. Let's rewind 3 years back. Many trees fell. Some of those still standing in the forest simply died of impact and shock. Green color practically disappeared. Raging waters caused thousands of landslides. Water pushed huge boulders down from the mountains, creating avalanches of debris. Furious seas washed away homes and roads. Whatever wasn't washed away got buried under huge logs. Broken forest trees pulled to the sea by cascading floodwaters.
All right, so good afternoon, Mr. Carrot. How are you?
I'm fine. Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to the other participants and the officials from the United Nations Development Program and also the government of Jamaica. So good afternoon to all of you. It's a pleasure to be here from Dominica.
It's a pleasure to have you. Well, you have set yourself up for a very audacious goal in becoming the world's first climate resilient nation. So as noted, following the devastation of Hurricane Maria, the Prime Minister declared Dominica's aim to become the world's first climate resilient nation. How is your progress towards that goal?
Well, that is a very serious, a very ambitious vision. And so to actualize the vision, we were able to develop, first of all, what we call the National Resilience Development Strategy. So it's a strategic document. It also contains, it has a policy content as well. So it's policy, both policy and strategy. And we were able to develop that document, which served to guide the development of our national plan, which is the Climate Resilience and Recovery Plan. And it has also served to guide the development of sector plans as well. So we do have a full national resilience development framework that we can work with. Now, within the CRP, first of all, within the NRDS, we do have 3 pillars that we stipulated in the NRDS. And the first one is climate resilient systems. The second one is prudent disaster risk management. And the third one is effective disaster response and recovery. And within the CRP now, we used these pillars, and within the CRP, we're able to develop 6 core result areas. So the first one is strong communities. And for Dominica, we believe that strong communities comprise a key pillar to resilience, a resilient nation. We in Dominica, we have largely a civilian disaster management system. We do have government agencies, but we do not have National Guards and the military. And because of our topography, we depend very largely on the organization of communities and the equipping of communities to be able to function independently. As a matter of fact, this is one of our targets in the CRP, that communities are able to function independently for 15 days before or without any help from government. So strong communities, we believe, is a very core cornerstone of a resilient nation, and we work with other agencies of government to ensure that we conduct vulnerability assessments for all communities in Dominica. We develop disaster management plans. We develop disaster management committees. We build the capacity of those communities and their institutions to include local authorities, local government bodies. And we ensure that the public, the community residents are properly informed and properly equipped to handle the eventuality of disasters. The second result area we have is the robust economy. As you will remember, Hurricane Maria wiped off 226% of Dominica's GDP. So we really had no GDP after Hurricane Maria, and we are trying to ensure that we diversify our economy, restructure the economy, build stronger pillars within the sectors that drives the economy: tourism, agriculture, and manufacturing, and so on. Build more robust pillars for those sectors. And so the impact of natural disasters on the economy can be minimized. Because how would we survive? How will we continue to survive and live as a people if natural disasters wipe out 226% of the country's GDP? Well, that often. The third result area we have is well-planned and durable infrastructure. We suffer significant losses from weather systems, again, because of our topography, our level of rainfall. Our roads and bridges get washed away. We do suffer from landslides and rock falls and so on. And so we do have to develop more robust infrastructure, more resilient bridges, more resilient road surfaces, as well as to do water control as well, wastewater control through drains and gutters and culverts and so on. The fourth one is enhanced collective consciousness, and we believe that the entire nation, everybody, from the individual way up, the way up to the government, must understand the need to keep within their consciousness the requirement to be resilient as individuals and as institutions, as a society, because the issue of natural disasters, especially hurricanes, is a real one for us, an existential and threat to our livelihood and to lives as well, and as well as significant important properties and assets. And the fifth one is strengthen institutional systems, and that is working within the government system as well as the private sector and civil society to strengthen systems, especially in introducing within those those institutions, the issue of resiliency, resilient systems that are able to cope and to survive natural disasters and to respond and recover very effectively post-disasters. And the final one we have is protected and sustainably leveraged natural assets. And Dominica, as you know, we do have some natural assets that we need to continue to preserve. Currently we're exploring in a very big way our geothermal resources. We do have fresh water, and we have lots of forests. And so our water system depends very largely on our forest ecosystem. And so there are certain assets that are important to our survival and livelihood as a people. And so these are the 6 core result areas. And from these result areas, we're able to develop 20 targets, 20 climate resilient targets. And I'm not going to go through them, but we were able to use these.
My other question to you, I was going to ask what are some of the benchmarks? So you would have indicated some of the result areas, but I was going to ask what are some of the benchmark, the milestones that will give you an indication to say that Dominica has now reached its target of being the first climate resilient nation. And also very briefly share with us the timeline in which you are working with. In what year are you saying Dominica will become the first climate resilient nation? Let's keep it short.
The target is 2030, and we do have 20 individual targets we're going to use to assess the country's level of resiliency. And we have put in place a reporting system. First of all, implementation, monitoring, and reporting system. So the government agencies, these are the agencies that implement most of the projects. We also work with the private sector as well, and they report as well. But so we have a system of reporting in place, and the system, the indicators and the reporting system is actually based on the 20 indicators, 20 targets as indicated in the CR.
All right, thank you. And my other question to you, I am sure it will take quite a bit of resources to get this actually going. So in 30 seconds or less, can you share with me what has been Dominica's resource mobilization strategy?
Well, the first thing is post Maria, we had some savings. We had cash that was set aside for these eventualities, and so we were able to use some of that to do recovery and rehabilitation. But as well, we got quite a bit of support from our bilateral partners, from the European Union, the World Bank, from the Caribbean Development Bank, and all those Caribbean governments, we shouldn't forget them, as well, provided support to us. And so we were able to mobilize quite a bit of support, cash, as well as material support, as well as personnel. So we had the soldiers from Jamaica, for example, that came to assist us and to provide security and bring back order in the country post Maria. So our sources of funding, there were many, and a lot of it came from our own resources, especially from the Citizen by Investment program.
All right, and my final question is, what lessons have you learned as a nation, and in light of that experience, what advice would you give to governments and communities?
Okay, well, the first thing is that it's good to have a vision. It may be very ambitious, but it's good to have a vision. Vision helps you to set your goals and so forth. And if you're able to interpret and understand the vision and spread the vision very clearly, and give it substance, give it structure, and capture it like we did in a single document in the NRBS, for example. We're able to capture that vision and give it meaning and structure and got it to make sense so people could understand it, and it can be projectized. We could develop projects from some of the strategies that were outlined in the NRBS. And basically, importantly, for any country that wants to manage disasters and build resiliency within their society is to ensure that you have a clear vision, ensure that you have a proper framework with policy and strategic documents, and they shouldn't be too burdensome, and ensure that you have a plan and a system where that national plan can inform your sectoral plans, and put in place a system of implementation, a system of accountability, which includes reporting, monitoring, and the other issue, the important issue, is all that must be done in a collaborative way, in a cooperative way. So CREED had to work with the government agencies, existing government agencies, sector organizations, and so on, private sector organizations, civil society, to ensure that the indicators were developed, the monitoring system, implementation and monitoring system was developed, as well as the reporting system was developed.
All right, thank you. And I'm seeing a common thread as we wrap this section of the fireside chat, that there requires a lot of public-private partnership in mobilizing the resources required to build the resilient nation that Dominica would like to see by 2030. Ladies and gentlemen, help me in thanking Mr. Carrett for his wealth of knowledge and information that he has provided, and I'm sure we'll be able to model some of the points that he would have mentioned here this afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Carrett. A global prize is to be awarded to the city or country that achieves the peak of disaster resilience. Bermuda might be a fitting first winner. Isn't that a very bold statement? Yes. It gives me great pleasure this afternoon to introduce Miss Azar, Rosie Azar, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Home Affairs, Bermuda, to speak on her nation's 300-year-old hurricane resilient culture. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
All right.
I want to say first, I did not provide that little piece of a first prize. It was provided by someone else, but thank you anyway.
It is indeed a pleasure to have you here today as we continue the discussion about the lessons learned of ensuring that we're building resilience here in the Caribbean. Now, what makes the buildings special in Bermuda? Please describe them so that we can have a very vivid picture in our mind.
Just to start, to give some history before that, it's not that we started with 300 years ago, somebody decided that we needed to have a hurricane or to build for hurricanes. We had to build out of need. Bermuda is very isolated, 700 miles from the west and 700 miles from the Caribbean, the closest land to us. So we had to find ways of using our own materials to build. So we also had no natural water source at the time except rain. So when our, for instance, it started with building what would become tanks to hold the water. And it is reported that when they were building the tanks, they realized that the Bermuda stone would make good material to build houses. And from there, it would build slate for the roofs. So if anyone's seen our houses, number one, the Bermuda roof has become the standard for Bermudian vernacular architecture, but it was built that way out of the necessity to provide both shelter and water catchment. So if somebody is flying into Bermuda and they look down, all they will see are these slanted roofs which catch water. Thank you. So I don't have to describe too much. The interesting thing is, at the time, it was also built very smartly. They were strategically placed to take advantage of the leeward winds, the orientation where the sun would rise and set, normally high ceilings to help air circulation. And we had to design them that way because, of course, air conditioning did not exist. And until very recently, they were not affordable to the average person. Those roofs are normally lime washed to preserve the roof, and also it's another way of maintaining sufficiently alkaline pH balance that inhibits bacterial growth and allow the water to stay potable. The stone of our houses also provide a measure of insulation against the heat of the summer and the cold of the winters. Those elements have now been incorporated into our building codes so that all houses do not pass muster and do not get planning. If they don't get planning permission, they can't get electricity. So everything is tied in to ensure that our homes are well built. And by the way, the stone itself, we have to have a minimum of 8-inch up to 12-inch block, depending on which floor that we're talking about. So they tend to be able to withstand bad weather, whether it's winter storms or whether it's hurricanes.
The fact that when Hurricane Nicole hit Bermuda in 2016, reports are that all functions were restored in 72 hours. Mm-hmm. When Fiona struck in 2022, hear this, ladies and gentlemen, less than a day for restoration. That's remarkable. So the golden question is therefore, what is Bermuda's disaster resilience strategy?
First of all, we have an emergency measures organization, or EMO, that once empaneled until before a hurricane, until the all clear is given, is the ultimate authority. All information flows through the EMO. The EMO includes representatives from both the private and public services, BELCO, our utility company, electricity utility company, our Ministry of Public Works, Environment and Natural Resources, this is Home Affairs, Health, the hospitals, the Bermuda Weather Station, National Security, Bermuda Police, Bermuda Regiment, the fire services, the Chamber of Commerce, the hotels, the telecommunications sector, the transport and airport services, and others, which means we're always communicating. There are well-established procedures for recovery, and that allows, when you talk about it's restored, when we have the fire services and public works and the regiment come out immediately to clear the roads. Starting with the emergency services, the hospital, in addition to the any other critical services. The utility electricity company flies in before the hurricane hits, staff from their partner members of Carilac before the hurricane strikes. They also have a reciprocal agreement where our staff go to the Caribbean. No, nothing. Sorry. I'm trying to stop them from coming in. And everything, because everything, the telecommunication sector, of course, also ensures that their infrastructure is back up. Just because we're recovered doesn't mean that people don't have or all have electricity. That sometimes takes a while, but our main lines are now underground, even though the ancillary, the lines going to different neighborhoods, are not. But because we've had to do it so many times, we've gotten good at it. We have an emergency channel that keeps people up to date, and also provides phone numbers for emergency calls. And again, everything goes into that one area, so that where it's necessary, people can be sent out as soon as possible.
And my final question to you is, how prepared are you for the hurricane season, the 2023 hurricane season?
It's much of the same. We just go into that mode. By the way, the worst hurricanes that come to Bermuda are normally September and October. Those are the strongest hurricanes. Normally, if they come earlier, they may be strong tropical storms or Category 1 hurricanes, but the worst are September and October. So we do have some time. But again, because people are in that mode, supplies come in right at the beginning of the hurricane season. People are encouraged to get their batteries. We have generators for those who choose to have them. And people tend to move with in mind, we got to be prepared for the hurricane. We're not going to be rushing around at the last minute. But because we also have our own, each home has its own sewage system, sewage tank, it also has its own tank. It's not like we're going to be sitting and worrying about water. We still will buy it, but we don't worry about water or getting access to water and other, except for electricity, on other items, necessary items, because every house is its own
rainwater catchment
organization
system.
Infrastructure.
Right. And my final question to you, to keep it very short, final, I know I said the final, but what lessons have you learned as a nation, and in light of that, what advice would you give governments and communities based on Bermuda's experience? Again, keeping it very short and tight.
I start by saying preparation, and not just before a hurricane, but throughout, to make sure that all the systems are working, that there is redundancy when they, to make sure that, and one thing that we have learned, every hurricane is a lesson learned, is a learning experience. So it gives the opportunity to identify infrastructure that requires strengthening. That is very important. Making sure that things are at the point they're not going to cause a problem. Cutting trees that will get into power lines. All of that has to be done, or we have to have a focus on that. Protecting the environment. Our natural resources are some of the most important protections. Our coral reefs, I have an engineer colleague who said, well, what for climate change, why we should build a wall around Bermuda, and then that'll solve everything. That will not happen, I will tell you. But the interesting thing is our coral reefs are our natural wall against rising tides, against high tides during hurricanes, removing invasives from cliffs and other areas, protecting mangroves and other plants that become a natural barrier. These are the best combatant against soil erosion, also that causes landslides. And that people are first. One thing that happens in Bermuda that we always talk about when we're fighting with each other every other time about every other issue is during a hurricane, everybody is focusing on making sure that people are taken care of, whether it's our sick and infirm. It's not just about the public services, it's about us caring about our neighbors.
Absolutely. Would it be factual to say, Ms. Azar, that you will allow all of us here on location to come and visit Bermuda?
By all means, certainly.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, a rich fireside chat with Ms. Rosie Azar. Please extend your appreciation. What an evening it has been. A series of robust discussion and sharing of lessons learned and best practices. And just to say that now more than ever, small island developing states are required to accelerate the pace of driving innovation to mitigate and adapt to the impacts of climate change. Of course, as we all know, there is a triple planetary crisis, and that is pollution, the climate crisis, and of course, biodiversity loss, the ecological crisis. And so they all come with distinct challenges, however, they're all intertwined. The essence of resilience requires all actors in society to work together to withstand the shocks and deleterious impacts of climate change. Now, I am going to open the floor very briefly to our guests online for the Q&A section, and I also open the floor to any questions or queries here on location. And of course, our guests on social media, please write your questions and we will be more than delighted to respond to them. In the meantime, we ask that you hashtag hurricane season, hashtag UNDP Resilient Series. And we have a question. Please state your name and your affiliation.
Hi, good evening. My name is Aisha Pine, and I work with the UNDP. So my question is to Mr. Thompson. I'm actually from Clarendon. I once lived in Old Harbor as well. So I heard when you spoke about the siren that goes off if there should be a tsunami. So my question is, that siren that goes off, how far away from Old Harbor or how far out do you need to be? For example, if you're in Clarendon, would you hear it? Would you know that there is an impending threat from a tsunami? You know, as I was sitting there, I was just wondering. Yes.
Thank you. No. You could stay right. Oh, no, please join us here on the platform to respond to the question.
In the hot seat.
Yes, back in the hot seat again.
Literally. Two things. There's actually a national emergency tone. So if there is a major disaster in Jamaica or the threat of a major disaster in Jamaica, there's a national tone that is played on air. We're actually doing some work. We have done some work, but to finalize that process to revamp the national tone. For me, it's not scary enough. A tone should be one that when it goes off, persons are literally stopped in their tracks and they take notice. So that's where we need to go in terms of the national tone. The Old Harbor-based siren, you'll really only hear it in all the coastal town of Old Harbor Bay. And so it's really for that coastal town, because they are, a lot of the time, it's coastal towns that are impacted by tsunamis. We are currently doing work in Port Maria in order to, because the Old Harbor Bay actually is tsunami certified. So on the UNIOC, we have gotten certification for Old Harbor Bay as being tsunami ready. So that's one, and so we are now working to have the town of Port Maria being another tsunami ready town, and to replicate that process right across the island. So there is So those sirens that we are putting in, you'll hear them within the communities or a little bit out of the community, but not if you're in Clarendon, you're going to hear the Ola Babi siren. You won't have that. But there is also a national tone. And what we are working on as well as part of our early warning process is to have mass notification. So to pump information to everybody have a cell phone. Some have 2, 3, and 4. Like I'm seeing this youngster here with about 4 cell phones. Constantly sending messages. He acknowledged. So you know I'm being serious. I'm not joking. But fun and joke aside, everybody has really 2 cell phones. And so we're working with the 2 telecommunication providers in country to ensure that we can send early warning messages to everyone, and also to ensure Ms. Edwards is big on us looking at the common alerting protocol that is used internationally, where it literally takes over your phone, so you can't do nothing else with your phone, and you just hear this tone going off for you to realize that there is an emergency happening or there is an impending emergency. So basically that's how we are now in terms of early warning. We are doing a lot of work in country in terms of building resilience around early warning and ensuring that our early warning system are robust. So we have done work. The first real kind of early warning preparedness measure we put in was one for the gorge. I guess you would have seen during, so I don't remember what the system was where the person went in and they literally tried to breach the gates in the gorge. It's literally to protect people from themselves. Sometimes you don't want to do it, but most of the time you have to hurt persons because people tend to go against their better judgment and do things that will get them in trouble. So the first one that we actually put in was for the gorge. And a siren will be going there as well as part of the project that I spoke to earlier. And so we have done as well for Indian Town and Alley in Clarendon, and we have done a flood early warning system and flood messages for Benson Fording, because people tend to drive through that fording as well. Remember when I used to live in Consent Spring, I am going home one day and it was raining heavily, and when I reached close to Benson Ford, I'm like, where are you going? I had to turn back. But persons, they are driving SUVs and they think that they can brave the water, they try to push through. So these are some of the things that we are doing.
Yes, and just to add that, I'm so happy that you're also working with the rural areas, because oftentimes you have that imbalance or dissonance between the, mitigation and, advancement of telecommunications in the urban areas, i.e. Kingston, because
Kingston is not Jamaica.
Exactly. Kingston is not Jamaica. So I'm happy we're extending that courtesy to other parishes in our island. We have another question. Yes?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'm Abigail Clark, Program Associate Policy here at UNDP. And my question is for Mr. Thompson. Sorry again, so you're in the hot seat. So I'm also the gender focal point and the disability inclusion focal point. So during your presentation, I was very, very surprised, happily surprised to know and feel very proud to know that you are actually having gender mainstream into your organization, and also you're looking to ensure that it's inclusive. So my question to you is, I would like to know, you can state briefly 2 strategies that you have done or you're intending to do to ensure that your organization is inclusive of a particular group that we oftentimes leave out, which is persons with disabilities. I'm especially intrigued to hear what are 2 other strategies that you have, you're rolling on for even 2023 to ensure that they're included in everything that you do.
All right. As I said, you remember I said earlier that I play cricket? So if you know about cricket, right, that's like either, what would you say, a bouncer? Or it's a googly, one that turned and went the other way, that you're unable to play. But just to say that we have done a lot of work in that area. The Jamaica Foundation for Persons with Disabilities are a main part of our operations, and we include them a lot. They were also at the council meeting this morning. We involve them in that process, and they're a part of the National Disaster Risk Management Council. One work that we are proud of, we did it some time ago, and we are revisiting that process, is some activities that we did in 2015, Misha, about 2014, 2015, with Sun City Radio, to ensure that that persons with disabilities can get messages during any major disasters. So there were two. You have strobe messages, and you also have buzz messages. So if dependent on the kind of disabilities that the persons have, they'll be able to get that information. So we did a lot of work in that area. Also, when we retrofit shelters, they are retrofitted not only for shelters, because most of the time schools are used as shelters. About 96%, Philip, of our shelters are schools, roughly. 96 to 98% of our shelters are schools. So when we do retrofitting in schools, we also ensure that they are retrofitted for persons with disabilities, not only to be used during an emergency or a disaster situation, but also to be used on a daily basis for students who are part of that school. Because the ramps, bathrooms, everything are retrofitted to accommodate students with disabilities, so that they are comfortable on a daily basis going to school, and persons with disabilities who have to use the shelters. So we ensure all the time that they are not left out of the equation, because they are part and parcel of the society. They are functioning members of the society, and they contribute to the society. Absolutely. So that's why we ensure that whatever we're doing, we're practicing inclusive DRR, where no one is left behind and everyone is being planned for.
All right, and I guess the hurricane season is showing that it is here with the rain. All right. Thank you so much. So you can see that the ODPEM is working to ensure that their disaster policy is gender responsive and inclusive to persons with disabilities. So great to hear that. Next question.
Thank you.
Yes.
My name is Garfield Young. I am Dean of the Faculty of the Built Environment at UTEC. I think Mr. Thompson did this course at UTEC. I'm not sure.
Yes, I did.
Okay, yes.
Yes.
You need to turn on.
Oh, yes, it's on. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay,
Whoa.
great.
Yes. My name is Garfield Young. I'm Dean of the Faculty of the Built Environment at UTEC.
Mm-hmm.
And we offer courses in urban and regional planning and sustainable energy and climate change and the works, green architecture and so on. I recently was involved in a French development agency project that developed an online course for building climate resilience. A little part of it, we did an inventory on what's offered for training and so on. But I'd like to find out from all the presenters, because they represent different jurisdictions, Mr. Thompson for Jamaica, Mr. Carrot for Dominica. In fact, the project took us to Dominica because of the French influence, and it involved a number of French-influenced Caribbean islands. And Ms. Azar from Bermuda. What is your sense of the inventory of individuals trained, wherever they are trained? And it's likely many of them are trained in the same program that a number of persons in this room did at UTEC. What's your sense of the inventory of individuals who are trained in not just urban planning or regional planning, but in climate resilience, in building climate resilience or in mitigation strategy? Do you get a sense that when these people come, wherever they come to in your organizations, that they require a bit more training in these specific areas? To take in account our current situation, small island developing state, in the context of climate change, the unpredictability and so on. What's your sense of the inventory?
We'll throw that to Ms. Azar, and then we will go to Mr. Carrot, and then over to Mr. Thompson.
Just to ask, are you talking about being trained in climate mitigation, climate risk?
Yes. Yes, that's my specific question. So, if, for example, you employ an urban planner fresh out of a master's program, what's your sense of how ready, how prepared they are in regard to these issues, building climate resilience or mitigation measures in the context of climate change?
Interesting that you asked that, because right now we have embarked, and when we're almost finished, on a climate study for Bermuda. That we were fortunate to have it funded by the UK also, and it's going to look at our critical deliverables over and to model up to 100 years. It is relatively new in Bermuda, the whole climate mitigation, as it is in many places. But I am proud and fortunate to say the planners, we have them all in our Department of Planning, and that's in my ministry. Have all of the planners have to have a degree in urban plan, a certification in planning. In addition, in the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, we have the most scientists in Bermuda, and that's something to say because we also have buyers, we have the reinsurance, but they are focused on climate mitigation. That is their job. There will be new sciences based on what we will see in relation to climate mitigation, but we are satisfied. Remember, we're a small country of 60,000. So we're not talking about having to train a lot of people over in what we have, but everybody who's trained in those departments end up being trained in climate mitigation, environmental protection, and urban planning.
Right, Carrot here from Dominica. I think there is an increasing interest in that field, the issue of risk mitigation, risk management, environmental management, and an increasing number of persons who return from further studies from universities and colleges. They do aspects of risk management and environmental management as part of the studies. And within Dominica itself, we do have updated building codes, updated building regulations, updated the standards, building standards. And when these were developed, we were able to go all over the country and provide training to building contractors in the new code, the new regulations, and the new standards. We also provided training as well to quite a few homeowners. So there is, I think, much broader understanding of the need to acquire these. That I think these particular knowledge areas, because of our experiences and so forth with tropical weather systems.
All right. Thank you. All right, just to respond to your question, I think it's probably easier on our side. The University of Technology is home in the region to the development and training of urban planners. The course actually, and I am kind of dating myself, and I will date Miss Edwards as well. We actually went to CAS, part CAS, part UTech. So we are not on the young generation of planners. We are on the old school planners in terms of being at CAS and being at UTech. And I think we were privileged then to have as one of our faculty head the late Christian Wolf. which is a solid planner. So within this room, you have 4 of us sitting at this table, and we did urban planning and environmental resource development. And further, a person have gone on to major in, well, we did physical planning and environmental resource development. And then person like myself and others have gone on to extend our studies in urban planning and geographic information science, or urban planning and environmental resource development. So when those planners come into organizations, based on the training that we have gone through at CAS then and the University of Technology now, the robust nature of that course allows us to literally hit the ground running. Nonetheless, as the globe evolves and as the dynamics of environmental management, the dynamics of climate change and disaster risk reduction changes, you have to do updated training. So within our landscape in Jamaica, and I'm not only speaking to the ODPEM, we constantly send persons on training. The National Environment and Planning Agency, ODPEM, the Climate Change Unit, MEGJC, local government, Ministry of Local Government and Community Development, now back to community development from rural development, is a constant upgrading and training initiative and an agenda to ensure that you are keeping in pace with what is happening globally. Because as a nation, and especially as a small island developing nation, we cannot be left behind. So, and as I always say to my team at the ODPEM, the business of disaster risk management is a moving goalpost. And climate change is also a moving goalpost. So what applies today will not apply tomorrow. So in order for you to be able to impact your nation's development and also to ensure that you're ultimately protecting your people, training and development is constant. It's ongoing, and globally you will get left behind. And also remember, we sit in a United Nations framework under UNDRR. We're a part of the Caribbean mechanism under SEDIMA, and when we go to these global conferences, we have to shine. we have to shine. And as I always said to persons that I am a very proud Jamaican. So whenever I have my nation's name on a digital plaque in front of me, or I have my nation's flag in front of me, I'm not there to play. I am there to properly represent and to show what we are capable of as a nation state, and also what I am capable of as a trained professional. So it is always ensuring that there is training, and also from an individual standpoint in terms of your individual development, is to ensure that you are constantly as well, you're doing your reading, you're doing your research, and you're upgrading yourself to ensure that you constantly have that mobility, you know, and you are constantly ensuring you are the best in your field.
Absolutely. All right, we have our final question.
Hi everyone, my name is Antoinette Aiken, Tony. I'm representing Tony Terp and also the deaf community. Abby had asked a question about disabilities, but I noticed you guys keep talking about the radio and tones. How does a deaf person know when there is an emergency? Because if the siren is radio and tones, and you talk about the phone as well, but it's not a must that the deaf person will get that message through the phone. So what access are you really providing for the deaf person? I'm not talking about physical access. I'm not talking about radio access. I'm not talking about visually impaired access. I'm talking about deaf access. What happens when a hurricane comes? What happens if a tsunami comes? What access are you providing for that deaf person? Don't tell me about ramp. Deaf people don't need ramps. They need communication access. They need access. They need to know that, okay, there's an emergency. I can go back to, I forgot the hurricane. I think it was Sandy. a lot of deaf people had no idea, literally, until the day it came. And that's their experience every day. So what is ODPEM, Bermuda, Dominica? What is the Caribbean doing for deaf people? Because they exist.
No, and
Yes, absolutely.
and you're correct. And let me answer it quickly. I don't think you were hearing exactly what I was saying. And
I heard you said tone and text.
I also said, which I said in terms of the project that we did with Sun City. There's also strobe messages. So and a part of what we're trying to build out now with the communication providers, you will get messages coming into your phone. So if you're able, once you're able to see, if you're hearing impaired, you'll be able to read those messages, and also
if you are deaf is the correct term. But what I want to ask is from our partners in Dominica and Bermuda to also, join the conversation. But could you also, before we swing over to them, what is the strobe message for our viewers?
So the message is really about the emergency that is being experienced, and also action to be taken in terms of the emergency. So that what you'll get in terms of the messages that are pumped to the phones, and also remember and that's something that we have to revisit. I remember it happening years ago when I was much younger, in terms of communication on television, where you get the messages running across the screen. And they will literally say for the hearing impaired, and you get the information. So those are the stuff that we have applied in the past, and that we are ensuring that will continue to happen, and that we are constantly doing development in terms of ensuring that we can communicate with the persons with disabilities, and
right.
not only the deaf community, but the entire community with disabilities in terms of the information that will go to them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let us throw over to Dominica and Bermuda. How are we making provisions for persons with disability, not only talking about persons who are deaf, the generic ensuring that we have ramps, but how are we ensuring that the early warning systems are touching every aspect of the community of persons with disability?
Well, from Dominica's side, this is where we emphasize the need for data collection. Data collection, vulnerability assessments at the local community level. And so we need to know who are the vulnerable people among us, and integrate their needs, their requirements into the community disaster management plan. So this is how we deal with it, and we haven't had many serious problems with that. But it is important to have data and to know where our people are and what their specific needs are. No voice.
Okay, I can't hear you. So I will assume that you're turning it over to me. I will say I'm not going to try to answer when there is another ministry that is focused on that. And as the UNDP are aware, Minister Tanae Herbert is the minister responsible for social development and seniors, and has a specific responsibility for persons with disabilities. As has been said before, talking up to any disaster, there is always someone signing on the television, so they do get the opportunity to get the same message as the hearing public. However, what I cannot speak to is what happens when the power goes out. And that is something that I will talk to my colleague about, but I'm not going to pretend to answer for another ministry as it relates, or for the EMO as it relates to persons with deaf people in particular.
So much for that, Ms. Azar. And of course, our very own UNDP member, Abigail Clark, recently led the development of an app that we launched in Bahamas. So, Abby, you want to share some more about that?
Okay, thank you very much. So this is pretty much a best practice that I believe other Caribbean territories can utilize, and it's the Accessibility mobile app, and it's a very groundbreaking app that the Bahamas has. And essentially what it does is that it creates a database, and I heard the Dominica presenter spoke about database. So what it does is that all persons with disabilities in the Bahamas registers to that app, download it to their phone, registers on the app, and that information is sent to their main agency, which is the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities in the Bahamas. And what the app does is that one of the main features which UNDP has helped the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities establish is that emergency notifications are sent immediately to all the persons with disabilities, their families as well, because sometimes, you know, families are integral, they have to help them. So their families as well, that emergency notification is sent, and automatically they knew what is happening immediately on the ground and where to go, who is going to be there to help them. Now, that is something I believe as well, because the government is also looking to ensure, through partnership with their main telecommunications agency there, to ensure that it is no Wi-Fi will be required. So once the persons with disabilities download that app, it's straight access, because, right, so in essence, in the Bahamas, you have the rural areas, you have areas where you actually have to take a boat or, you know, pretty much to get back to where you need to be. So what they're trying to do is to make sure that it's accessible at all times, because as we note, electricity can happen when you have a natural disaster that might leave, right? So I think that is a best practice that we are very willing here at UNDP to help to spearhead, to have that spread across to all the territories that need assistance.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Abby. So there we go again. The partnership is critical to ensuring that we're building this type of resilient nation that we want to see. Yes, the family component is very integral. Thank you so much, Tony, for posing that question. Food for thought for the persons at the table to really think about not only targeting the one aspect or one community within the community of persons with disability, but ensuring that all areas are covered and it is inclusive. We'll close off with our final comment. Go ahead, Aisha.
So it's not a question. So I don't have a question, but it's a comment. I was a part of a sensitization session.
Don't think your mic is on.
I think that one is not working.
At the UNDP recently, where we were sensitized to, you know, the disability community, and our colleague there raised a very good point. Because Antoinette, my other colleague here, we were just discussing that, yes, you may have all these messages that persons in the disability communities would benefit from in a disaster, but we were thinking public education, go to these areas where they can be found and at least let them know, okay, for example, if you are not able to see, then when you see this light flashing, if that is what's there to alert you to a disaster, then, you know, once you see this light flashing, then perhaps, you know, it's a disaster and they can have that ability to recognize it on their own. So that was a comment, or that's a comment we want to make, or recommendation, that these different things that are being implemented, you know, you go to that area where they can be found and sensitize them as to what they can look for in that event.
Yes, building a greater sense of community. But ODPEM did actually mention also that within that committee that met this morning, the council, National Disaster Risk Management Council that met this morning, they do have a representative from the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disability to also be the voice of that community to ensure that they are well prepared when a disaster should arise. And ladies and gentlemen, we close the afternoon, and may I again ask you to help me in giving a resounding thank you to our presenters this afternoon, Mrs. Denise Antonio, our resident representative, Ms. Azar, the permanent secretary at the Ministry of Home Affairs in Bermuda, Mr. Richard Thompson, who has been in the hot seat, and he is Director General acting at the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, and of course, Mr. Carrot, yes, and he is the Resilience Planning and Development Consultant at the Climate Resilience Execution Agency, CREED for short, in Dominica. Please extend a warm thank you to our presenters. Yes. So again, we invite our persons joining us online to keep the momentum going and to ensure that you are hashtagging #Hurricane Season and #UNDP Resilience Series. Keep the conversation going, and we'll close this afternoon session by asking you to turn your attention to the screen as we share a video on hurricane season tips, and that is brought to you courtesy of our partners at ODPEM. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and our viewers online.
This is we're committed to reducing the impact of disasters occurring in Jamaica. We're ever ready to assist you before, during, and after a disaster. But everybody have a role to play, so make we work together and follow the plan. Whether rich or poor or where you come from, hurricanes affect everyone, so be prepared. Prevention is better than cure. Be prepared. Listen to ODPEM. A message from the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management.
All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Prepare, prepare, prepare. I am Carrie-Ann Willis, signing off this afternoon on behalf of the UNDP Multi-Country Office here in Jamaica. And thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful afternoon.
In a world where poverty, inequality, and exclusion are on the rise, and nations remain vulnerable to crises like climate change, natural disaster, pandemic, too many of us are being left behind. Our journey to the Sustainable Development Goals, though delayed, is not denied. This challenge drives the mission of the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, and energizes our team here and across 170 countries and territories. We are UNDP, determined to eradicate poverty, reduce inequalities and exclusion, and build resilience so countries can sustain progress. This is who we are and why we exist. We are UNDP, answering the call to solve these challenges through 6 signature solutions tailored to your country's needs and priorities. They're UNDP's multifaceted plan, focusing on keeping people out of poverty, ensuring governance for peaceful, just, and inclusive societies, facilitating crisis prevention and increased resilience while focusing on nature-based solutions for development, championing clean and affordable energy and gender equality. And now, the UNDP Multi-Country Office located in Jamaica is offering UNDP's signature solutions to Jamaica, Bermuda, Cayman Islands, the Bahamas, and Turks and Caicos Islands. Our signature solutions are the inspiration for a new country program designed in partnership with government and civil society. Together, we're taking aim at multidimensional poverty by addressing social resilience and inclusion, citizen safety and security, and rule of law, climate change resilience, and sustainable natural resource management. This means day to day, we are on the ground, supporting crisis prevention, response, and recovery from natural disaster, championing livelihoods that preserve and heal our planet, helping the vulnerable access opportunities to thrive, supporting countries accelerate action on climate change, supporting your vision for clean energy and water security, partnering for equity, justice, and security for all. We are UNDP, ready to mobilize development financing for your big ideas, ready to advance the effectiveness of your solutions with innovation and digitalization so that your solutions make a real difference in people's lives. We are UNDP. Count on us to maintain our global reputation for transparency and accountability on your development needs. Count on us to help you access our global policy network of experts and resources. If your goal is to end poverty, lift the marginalized, and strengthen your nation against crisis, think UNDP. We are ready. We are ready to partner on your solutions to eradicate poverty, reduce inequalities and exclusion, and build resilience so your countries can sustain progress. We are UNDP.